All right.
Well.
So, oh God, I already see the third topic. I know.
Oh, this is good.
All right.
All right, the
This is
third
good.
topic this is the one I've been most looking forward to, especially as I dug in a little bit more. GitHub Copilot. Got goosebumps already. Okay, so I'll explain it for maybe the non-developers. Okay, so there's a company known as OpenAI, and they in the past have been doing AI research, and they've done all kinds of amazing things. One of the most recent amazing things they did was released an algorithm, a tool, I don't know what you call it, called GPT-3. And that's the one, if you haven't seen it going around, it's the one where you can kind of type in like an article title, and then it would populate the rest of the article. Like, write me an article on Miley Cyrus and Martha Stewart cooking turkey, and then it would like write an article on that or whatever thing you wanted to come up with. And anyways, people then figured out that you could apply GPT-3 to all kinds of crazy solutions people were doing. I saw some where people were building UIs just off of saying, hey, make me a view that has a navigation bar with this logo and has scrollable content that's structured like this, and all of a sudden,
so
boom.
you've seen the Safari beta as well.
Exactly. Anyways, then it would like open up Figma and then draw that layout or whatever, right? Okay, so Microsoft at one point invested $1 billion into OpenAI, and they got exclusive rights to using GPT-3. And I'll touch on that in a second. Anyways, what then Microsoft has done with that is they leverage this tool to crawl everything that is on GitHub that's open source,
Which they own.
Yep. And then this GPT-3 algorithm, whatever, then came up with a set of solutions, and they bundled it into a tool called GitHub Copilot. The idea is, while you're writing code, this thing is kind of like an AI assistant pair programmer. So pair programming is when you sit next to another developer and you guys write code together. So that's the idea. So I'll go back to the earlier point. Microsoft invested $1 billion in this company. So this company was founded in part by people like Elon Musk and some other folks with the idea of, we're worried about private companies solving AI solutions and then just winning the entire game that is capitalism, right? Of just coming up with tools that like they can just eat everybody's lunch. And so the idea was they wanted a company that was just as invested and could do just as much research and was fully dedicated to it, that they could kind of democratize these solutions. So as they came up with solutions, they could share them with the world and the world could benefit. So I find it highly ironic that already it completely ended very quickly. The name OpenAI doesn't mean anything anymore because Microsoft has exclusive rights to this. So anyways, why I bring that up is developers now can request access to use this tool. And one of the early things already that kind of alarms me is like, if the goal is to have these solutions like democratized, now we've got Microsoft saying, here's who can and who cannot use this tool, and we'll let you know when it's ready. And that to me is like already concerning as a developer. It's like, wait, if people have better tools out there and I don't have access to them, am I just going to fall behind? Am I going to whatever? Anyway, so we can dive into GitHub Copilot from there.
Or, not to be contrarian, but maybe the reason they didn't just throw the doors open to have everybody look at it is because it's not quite great yet. Like, they want to control access to it because they're afraid that if they just let everybody in, people will see what Brian Burkett and I saw when we went to the automatic face generator and noticed like the demo ones they show off are 1 out of 1,000, and the other 999 look like fucking demons from hell.
So I watched a handful of YouTube videos on this. I think Burkett, you probably did as well. Oh, yeah. One of the interesting ones to me, I don't think this doesn't really apply if you're a developer that has day-to-day tasks, but this is an interesting scenario. This guy used GitHub Copilot to pass these like the typical interview test questions that you might get, or the pre-interview test questions. So there's websites. I can't even remember what some of them are, but there's like code challenges online. There's tons of websites that do these. And so he grabbed like a bunch of the difficult ones. He copied the description from all of them, what the inputs, what the arguments ought to be for the function you need to write, and then what the expected outcomes ought to be. He pastes that into his editor, and then hits tab or whatever key it is that triggers Copilot, and then boom, in comes a solution. He grabs the solution, pastes it in, he passed all the tests. I'm like, that's fucking amazing. So in one sense, it's also like, I mean, because you could just Google this stuff and use Stack Overflow, which is a forum that developers yeah, exactly, a forum that developers share code solutions on. Yeah, it's just like an automated way of doing Stack Overflow.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, it is pretty awesome when you watch people use it on YouTube videos, and they'll, you know, there's like a 20-minute or an hour-long video of them just like messing around the editor and just going like, holy crap. And it's pretty good. And since it's not available, I mean, there's some politics definitely behind everything you said with OpenAI. And I mean, the fact that Microsoft only allows not just developers access to Copilot, but developers access to GPT-3. So I can't sit here and say, I have a great idea for an app and it could leverage GPT-3. I can't do that right now myself. Like, I don't have access to it. There's actually the people who work at OpenAI, I guess, have been saying like, this could potentially destroy the fabric of society, and they're they don't like the way that it's being used right now, I guess. I saw some videos about that, but anyway, Aaron and I ended up using another one right now called Tab 9, which I thought there were some pretty cool things in there. So that's one you can actually get for free. There's a paid version. I'm still on the free one. I think, Aaron, you're still on the free one too.
I'm still on the free one, yeah.
Right. And that one's pretty cool. So basically, as you're going through and you're typing your code, it'll help autocomplete common patterns before you've written it. Not just autocompleting things that you've already written and, you know, referencing a function name, or like common patterns like function and that kind of stuff. It literally, like, I was typing like var first, and it completed it to first name equals this. And it's like, I have never referenced first name anywhere, but it got the context of what I was working on and figured that that's what the name of my variable should be, right? And so there's a couple times when I'm just like, wow, I only hit a few keystrokes here and I was able to complete an entire feature set, or with some very slight tweaks, it was still. But the muscle memory is a little weird because I'm not used to having the code context, you know, things pop up, the little snippets that. At that stage, I'm usually ignoring them because they don't know that I'm writing the variable, and so I just like I'm like, wait a second, those are right. Like, that is what I was going to call that. You know.
God, I cannot wait for the stage of life that we get to in about 10 years where, no, it'll be more than that. It'll be like 15 years where our generation has retired. Like, we're out of the picture now. So it's all the kids that learn to code with this shit out here. You know, Captain, let me pass the test by just asking GPT-3 to do the work for me. And they're going to be shipping code that, you know, does your self-driving car and your little flying holograph machine and, you know, fucking the transporter that's going to be invented in, you know, 50 years. And we're just going to be all relying on that, all of it, just built by idiots.
We kind of already are.
Yeah, but yeah.
Like right now, like there's shit that's been built, like, I think that there's not a single person on Earth who knows everything about the Windows registry keys. There's like, you know, the couple people who like have written some of that stuff who are no longer, and I think that is kind of why it's a symptom of some of the shit that we see these days that's like broken.
Well, and we already saw that. What was the issue with, was that in Delaware or Connecticut, right? During the height of COVID, where they had to hire some 70-year-old COBOL programmers to come in and maintain their systems. It's like, so just so everyone's clear, Jones is always the pessimist when it comes to future tech. I think Burkett and I are always on board with the bleeding edge.
You're bleeding edge. I'm kind of in the middle. I just wait for it to pan out, and I think you.
I'm like, I just fucking dive in. We'll figure it out.
The first self-driving car Aaron wants to be in.
I'm already in it.
I'm not as bad as the opposite extreme, though. I mean, there are people out there that think you should still be editing your text in Vim, right? Like.
Yes, and so I watched a guy that was doing the counterpoints to GitHub Copilot. It's one of the more popular videos on YouTube if you search GitHub Copilot. But anyways, he gave like 6 points as to why you shouldn't use it. But one he gave was like, it's just another crutch. He's like, just like Stack Overflow is also a crutch. I'm like, fucking a crutch. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is like my water. I have to have this shit. That doesn't mean I'm a bad programmer though.
Yeah.
No, I actually bought into that in the beginning of my career, and where it was like start every site from scratch, right? And I started off doing like WordPress sites and stuff. So I wrote everything from scratch, and like folder structures, tooling, all that stuff. And to be fair, like back then, 10 years ago or whatever, like tooling isn't as extensive as it is today. But there was a point in which I'm like, and this is before people had the concept of starter themes and shit, and so eventually just clicked. It's like, wait, that just saves me way more time to have a foundation of things. But I bought into that, and I spent a lot of hours just rebuilding shit that I already built. So my thing that I think is really cool is like, for example, I write a lot of different languages and stuff, and I go into things, and like I have to remember, how does PHP do a for each loop again? How does JavaScript do a for loop? What's a for loop in Liquid? Or when I'm working Jekyll, all kinds of shit. And it's like, why do I have to remember? Like, I could move so much faster if I could just see the structure. My brain goes, oh, yep, that's right. That's how it goes. And, for common patterns, that's a basic example, but there's like really high level things that like I solve a lot of times. And I think that the future programmers could benefit from things that people have already solved. Like a lot of projects, you end up reinventing the wheel that other people have already solved, and you could probably pull them in with a couple keystrokes.
That's how you get
Autopilot.
949 node modules in your little tiny marketing website.
That's true.
God forbid you rewrite that 2-line wheel for is_thing array. Fuck no. You're going to install the is_array package from NPM.
Mm-hmm. Which has 17 dependencies that all have 17 dependencies. Yeah. God. Right. But so do you feel like, so I've never trusted auto-generated code. The auto-generated code is not new, right? Like this is not a new concept. This has been since like Dreamweaver and like Front Page and that shit way long ago, right? That
was always the worst.
What Dreamweaver created.
I think
it was tables on tables on tables.
Which is funny because if you look at a modern website, like if you pull up, like your average, I don't know, news website, it's a CMS generated cluster of shit. There's like div. It's just like a pyramid of divs all the way down.
Especially, and they're all a lot of times now it's just like random IDs and stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
and
it's all
that's
Facebook source code.
That's different.
Yeah,
that's obfuscation.
But there's like divitis is what we were told it was called in school, to have too many divs all over your page.
Let me ask you a question though. So we've got GitHub Copilot now, and okay, let's say I buy in and I'm like, all right, cool. I want to be faster. I want to get my job done faster, so I'll use this thing. Somewhere on the spectrum between, like Vim guy writing in a terminal, no autocomplete whatsoever, like has to type every single character by himself, doesn't use Stack Overflow. And the other opposite end of that spectrum, which is basically like fucking Jarvis from Iron Man, where I'm like, hey, Jarvis, I'd really like an app that is a Twitter client that does this one thing better. Can you build that for me? And he goes off and does it, right? Like, where on that spectrum do you draw the line and say, like, all right, past here, we are now entering like Wall-E territory where we're all just fat organic slobs relying on machines, and we no longer have any expertise whatsoever.
I think we're close. I think we're a lot closer than people realize.
That's what concerns me.
Well, no, but here's the thing. There's always going to be tinkerers like us that are just like, no, I really want to dive in and understand what's actually happening here. But there's so many use cases that, someone, sitting at their home could be like, I have this idea for this app. Let me plug it into this tool, and then boom, there it is. Now, that doesn't mean that that's all of a sudden a massively scalable solution. That's going to be the concern, is like if something like that all of a sudden takes off, and then, God forbid, what kind of leak or vulnerability was in that thing. But
have you seen TikTok?
The Chinese backdoor. That's a different vulnerability.
I mean, honestly, if Siri can listen to other people's really bad ideas, like, do you know how many times I've been asked to sign an NDA and I have to go meet somebody and sit down and they pitch me their app idea and I say, that's a to-do list app. There are several of them. You don't need to build this. You know? Or like, have you heard of Zapier or if this then that? Because you could string that together in an afternoon and call it a day and solve your specific problem.
Yeah, but if there's an assistant where you could just type that in and then it just and it just wired up all these things.
Let me have my afternoon free.
No, exactly. That's fantastic. I think it's fantastic. But
right, I get that you two are tech optimists, but I think we can all three of us agree that the assistant that does that will not be Siri.
That's correct. All right, so here's an interesting one, and I thought this is where you were going. So at one of my prior jobs, I had an engineer that had been coding for well over 20 years, and he was the guy that only used Vim, right? And then I had other guys on my team that were using JetBrains and Sublime and VS Code and whatever, right? And they were using all the tools, all the fucking extensions, all the node modules, all the bloat that you could. And there was like a trade-off. There was a trade-off, right? So the guy that did Vim, he just was too slow, right? He was too slow for you to throw onto a critical project that had a critical deadline. But he was excellent at like the maintenance sustaining work where all of a sudden something showed up and the guys that were on the bleeding edge are like, I don't know what's going on here. And he's like, well, I know all of the inner workings of JavaScript. I know exactly how set interval and set timeout differ and all the, I can talk to you for an hour about that. And he could dig in and figure out exactly what was fucking going wrong, right? And it's like you need both. You do. You need both of those types of people.
Yeah. There's juniors who get stuck all the time and can't dig themselves out of a hole because they haven't, figured out that hole yet, and so you need somebody to be like, shine a light and be like, this is how you get out of this problem.
Yeah. But I never met a like one of those juniors or whatever that wasn't curious about, okay, now what actually was going on and how do I dig in? Now that's obviously a bias because of how you hire and all that kind of stuff. You should hire for that kind of curiosity, right?
Right. But I don't know. To be honest, in my career, the faster I can execute shit and get it live and the faster I can be to 0 milliseconds, right? Or what do they call it? 100 milliseconds in the real time, the faster I can move. I mean, I feel like what I actually think is people like us will actually be able to produce a massive volume of work and of a higher quality, because a lot of times you're building a feature set and you're like, well, okay, this feature set should really have X, Y, Z features, but I only have time for X and Y, and Z isn't making the cut. Now I could probably do all of it and then some in a simple feature set, because it's just going to be some simple keystrokes and some comments and some rejiggering of some code. And it's like, all right, well, that's done now because I already know all of the problems that can arise from it.
See, I think it's going to go a different way. I think this AI-generated code is going to become the norm, right? And then when we are 60 or 70, we're going to be the fucking COBOL guys that get called in to be like, hey, this isn't working. Can you come figure out what the fuck is not working about this thing? Because nobody here actually knows anything about programming.
Do you know what a set timeout is? You're in. No. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. But I think it's cool. I've requested GitHub Copilot. I'm waiting for it. So
I'm not like, fuck you, don't make cool things. I'm just saying maybe we should also explore how humans can continue to develop their own expertise instead of relying on machines for everything. We just lost Aaron. Yeah, well,
jinx.
I guess he was like, well, fuck it, I'm done with my segment.
Did his Tesla just take him down?
I don't know.
We were talking about AI and all of a sudden he's gone.
Is he texting? I wonder if his internet died.
He was kind of glitchy a little bit, wasn't he? Did he text us? Well, I have a fancy new Stream Deck here that I probably should have some hold music on or some elevator music that I could play.
Yeah, let's see if we can get Aaron back.
Give this a second here and see. I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of things broken about. Oh, he's back. There's a lot of things broken still. All right. Is Is this the real Aaron coming back, or are you an AI version of Aaron?
This is the real McCoy.